Welcome to this edition of Simsbury School News. My name is Dominique Avery, and I'm delighted to welcome you back to this show on the Simsbury school system, a show that's designed to take a peek behind the scenes to help you get to know more about our schools. With us today is Meg Evans in her second year as the principal of Squadron Line Elementary School, and Maggie Seidel, who's in her first year as the assistant principal of Squadron Line. Welcome to you both. I'm so glad you came today.
Thank you for having us.
Meg is in her second year as principal of Squadron Line, but as I mentioned before, but she's not new to Simsbury. Meg, I understand you were at Tooten Hills for a big chunk of time.
I was fortunate. It's quite interesting. When I started at Tooten Hills, I had done my practicum and internship in Hampden, and really liked the district that I was working in, and I was supposed to have a job there at the end of the school year, and as budgets sometimes go, unfortunately it was cut. So I was coming to Simsbury for 1 year before I was able to go back, and just fell in love with the people and the district and the support that I ended up working at Tooten Hills for 12 years. As a school psychologist.
School psychologist, yeah. And
Yep.
Just before we went on the air, we had a conversation. My daughter went to Tooten Hills and had a very good experience there with special ed and the school psychologist. So I'm already loving you.
I think it's interesting when Simsbury gets in your blood, it tends to stay in your blood. So
That's very true. It is an amazing community. So tell me a little bit about how you got into education, where you studied.
I had my undergrad degree was from Villanova. I had a major in psychology and a minor in sociology. And then I took a year off. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with people, but wasn't really quite sure what the avenue was, and did some volunteer work. Was fortunate to have parents that could help support me as I tried to figure out what I wanted, and knew I wanted to work with kids, wanted to work with schools, and wanted to work with families. And school psychology seemed to be able to allow me to do all three. So I ended up going to Southern to get a master's and 6th year in school psychology, and started my career here in Simsbury as the school psychologist at Tooten Hills.
I'm going to show my bias because I think it's extraordinarily interesting that you got a degree first before you focused on schools. And I think it makes a more well-rounded person rather than just majoring in education or something.
Yep, I think I was fortunate. I knew, again, I said I always had wanted to work. I actually thought I was going to be an orthodontist. And then after biochem, decided that maybe that wasn't the route for me. And I just knew relationships are important to me, and I wanted to be in a career that could focus in on the relationships. And so I was fortunate at the end of my career at Villanova, we had to do an internship, and I had done some clinical work. And although I certainly admire that field and am thrilled that we have professionals who that's their passion, I knew that wasn't for me. I needed something a little bit different. So having that year off really helped me explore different options, and I got to see what a school psychologist was like in a variety of settings. I was able to do some work at the local high school. I was able to do something at a day program for students who the public schools, it wasn't quite as successful, and some clinical settings. And so I was able to kind of find my niche, and then ended up at Southern. And like I said, I did my practicum and internship in Hampden and really enjoyed working in the schools, and just knew that niche was for me. But I think when I came to Simsbury, the piece that was missing was that family involvement. And I think that's one of the things that makes Simsbury so special, is that we do have high involvement with our parents, and we have invested
I want to
teachers.
move on to Maggie, but you just raised an issue that I need to follow up, and that is there maybe not too much involvement, not too many helicopter parents? You can answer that too.
Yeah. I really don't think so. I think that when you have the more family involvement you have, it's going to be better for the kids. I think it keeps us at the top of our game. And I just had a conversation today with a parent. It's always great to hear the accolades and know what we're doing well. But for us to maintain excellence and build upon that, we have to know when we don't make that mark. And parents are often able to give us both that positive and negative feedback when needed, so that we can be the best we can be.
Well, it's excellent that you can take it and change. Okay, Maggie, it's your turn.
All right.
You came to Simsbury from experience in Avon.
Correct.
And so tell me a little bit about where you came from, and a little bit about your education and how you got into this education?
Sure. I'm actually one of 9 children, and there's 6 out of 9 of us who are in the education field to some capacity. So to say it's in my blood would be an understatement. But I started, I'm originally from upstate New York, outside of Syracuse, and I did my undergrad at the State University of Geneseo, which is a very well-known college for education, and I majored in elementary and special ed.
So you did,
I
did.
did.
Contrast.
Yeah, and which one of the things that I think makes us such a great team is that we've got that together. So I went from there and I did some time teaching in North Carolina, which was a very eye-opening experience. And then I went and was on Long Island for a period of time. I taught 4th grade there and did my master's degree at Stony Brook University in educational computing. So I did a lot with technology and computers.
Interesting.
And then we found our way to Simsbury and we bought a house here and fell in love. And I ended up getting a job in Avon where I taught at the 5-6 building. I taught both 5th and 6th grade for the last 6 years, and then did my administrative degree at Sacred Heart. And here I am.
That was a stretch moving.
Yeah.
Going down there?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. It was a great experience. I feel like I had a lot of classroom experience in all different settings, rural, urban, suburban. I had, just a lot of different experiences that I think have helped me a lot as we've taken on a new role as an administrator.
So I want to talk about that too. There's so much I want to talk with you about. North Carolina, you mentioned. You said it was really eye-opening. What was?
Just the differences. There's a vast, I would say, discrepancy. Sometimes there's a differences between where we are and where I was in New York and my own upbringing. And I think the differences and the challenges that I faced was definitely eye-opening and somewhat difficult. I think in support staff, things like, help with the cafeteria, and there was just a lot of different responsibilities.
That you had to do.
Correct.
It's like the olden days in Connecticut.
It really was, and it made me very appreciative, number one, of my own education, and number two, coming back to be a teacher. There's a lot of supports in place that I don't think I necessarily knew were there for me. So it was a great experience, but I did work in a very rural school that needed a lot of support. So it was a great experience.
So we've talked about you. We've spent quite a bit of time already. You're both very interesting. Squadron Line.
Yes.
You're, it's the largest school of our elementary schools. I was on the Board of Education for a few years, so I've been in all the schools, and I thought Squadron was a little intimidating. You taught at Tooten, which is a little more intimate.
Yep.
So how is it a comfortable school for young children?
I think it is. I think that we're fortunate that we're in a district that all of the schools are outstanding, and that we're very fortunate that we have dedicated teachers, we have invested families, we have students who come to the school ready to learn. And people really take a lot of pride in Squadron Line. It has a very strong sense of community. And I think that one of the benefits of a large school is that you have that tight knit of your team, so that the teacher teams can work together to problem solve. So instead of just having maybe 1 or 2 teachers on a team or 3 teachers on a team trying to work through some new curriculums or a new approach to do things, you have teams of maybe 4 or 5.
How are the teams organized? By grade?
Yes.
You have multiple classes, and that's the advantage of a bigger school. You have how many first grades and kindergartens?
Although we're still the largest school, we're a little bit smaller than we used to be.
How many?
Close to 950 students. Right. We're closer to 620.
Okay.
So we currently have 3 kindergarten classrooms. We have 4 first grades, 2nd and 3rd, and we have 5 4th grades, 5th grade, and 6th grade.
So that's when you talk about a team, it's grade level teams.
Grade level teams. And we're fortunate too because we have language arts consultants, SRIP teachers, our Simsbury Reading Intervention Program. We also have the psychologists that can come to those grade level meetings. We have special education teachers. So certainly when classroom teachers can get together, but also there are times when we can come together as a larger community to help understand children's learning styles better and to make sure that we have the right supports in place so that students can succeed. So I think sometimes that's nice. I think having a larger building also allows you, we have a leadership team at our school where we have a representative from each of the grade levels and special areas come, and we meet once a month with administration, and it allows us to have that vehicle between administration and faculty. They can bring any concerns and celebrations, and we can also roll out some new ideas and get their input. So
it's really interesting to hear, and that sort of all of this teamwork. I mean, it sounds nice, but it probably is nice because teaching. I actually was an elementary school teacher. I taught fourth grade for 5 years. I thought it was the loneliest job because it was in the olden days, and we didn't have support. We didn't have gym teachers. We didn't have cafeteria help.
Right.
We didn't have art teachers. We didn't have music teachers. We did it all, and we were alone. And it was lonely, and you needed help. You have these young lives, and you need a lot of help to get to know them and figure them out.
Yep. I think sometimes too it gives us an advantage of, because when you have more teachers, you're able to, with our class placements, we're going through that right now, taking a look and really trying to be able to say, what are the learning styles of the student? What are their social needs? What are their work habits? And being able to know what our staff, what are their teaching styles and things of that nature, and try to match that up, and also yet have that diverse experience, because when you're in a school from kindergarten through 6th grade, you get to know the students.
Right.
And when you have more of a student body, you can still keep it fresh with that class dynamic, even in your 6th grade year. That sometimes you don't have that when you're in this smaller school.
Is Avon similar?
It is. At the 5-6 building, we were about the same size. I would say that in general, it's slightly smaller, but the particular building that I was in was about 540, so relatively similar in size. But I would echo what Meg said, and again, the size of the building has not impacted. That was one of my concerns about connecting and meeting kids, and what was that going to look like? And I have really found it to be a place where you can walk in the hallways, and you can, kids will say hello, and they are very outgoing. And the same thing with parents. Opportunities like the new playground, we got to meet and work with parents, the science fair. I feel like there's something for everybody that you might not necessarily have in a smaller building, that kids can truly find their niche, whether it be drama club or an after school mad science, so there are really things out there for kids to connect to the building, which seems to not make it feel so overwhelming and large.
Interesting. You mentioned the new playground. Maybe we'll get into talk about, but we have this wonderful sign here, and I know that character education is very important, and I looked online and I saw there's a photo of the two of you standing in front of the sign in front of the school, and it's a big sign, and it says, "We all shine at Squadron Line, respect, responsibility, and kindness." And I also saw that there was a song which you told me that you're going to redo. It seems to me that in Simsbury, rather than talking about the issue of bullying, that the town has focused on the positive, and that seems to be what you're doing. What is character education? What does that mean?
Well, I think exactly what you had said is that the district really tries to focus in on being proactive and preventative. Certainly we have to have procedures in place for when students don't make the right choice, but we really try to work on how do you be respectful, responsible, and kind. Those are the three ideals that we have at Squadron, but all of the schools have character education programs, and we do have similar themes to them all. And so again, that's trying to be that proactive, celebrating when people are making the right choices. How do you problem solve? What's the difference between being bullied and maybe having a conflict that needs some type of resolution? And giving the skills to students so that they can do that independently. And then when they can't, where do they go to? Can they go to a friend? Can they help out with it so they don't feel alone in that? And if that's not working, how do you take it to the next level, to the teachers? So we have, again, the three ideals, and we celebrate those characteristics in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how do you do that?
Yes, so one of the ways is we have our Shine tickets that we can give to students when we catch them being good. Again, just displaying one of our ideals. And their name goes up on a wall, and when their sun lines on a particular area, they're able to get a prize. In the meantime, we do have our student council members work and call the parents home, so giving some leadership responsibility to students that they can inform parents that their children have been.
Oh, so students call the parents.
Yes, which is nice. Again, what we try to do is make sure that we are providing as many leadership opportunities for students to be a part of the program. Because again, what we're finding is, although it's a wonderful program and it's very exciting and we have a lot of buy-in and it's a part of our culture, trying to keep it new and fresh for our students who have been in it since kindergarten can be a little challenging. So we're looking for those ways that they can be involved. So certainly our sons are one aspect in which we support those characteristics.
Sure, and one of the other aspects is that we do some explicit teaching around these different areas of respect, responsibility, and kindness. We know kids know generally what these mean, but we spend 3 times a year with 3 different lessons, and then certainly on a, any given day or a basis that it might warrant it, we would go in, but 3 times a year. The first time at the beginning of the year, we did a lesson with students really focusing on the difference between bullying and conflict. And one of our school goals this year is around inclusion. How do we include each other? What does that look like? What does it look like on the, in the cafeteria, out at recess, in the hallway? So, and then the second lesson we did really works with literacy. We've got some of the books that we are teaching around. This happens to be one called Just Kidding. It's in 5th grade. Just Kidding is a very popular thing that comes up. We get that phrase a lot when things happen. I was just kidding.
Yeah, when it never means just
Correct.
kidding. Right.
Exactly. So it's a really great way that we use literacy and also our message of respect, responsibility, and kindness, but we do some explicit teaching with kids and have some conversations around what does this mean? What does this look like? So those are some of the lessons that we do around the teaching piece of it, in addition to watching for good behavior and giving kids that incentive.
And then from that, we also have some of our teachers will do some charity outreach. So we've had 2nd grade raise some funding to provide cheers for schools and things of that nature. So trying to take it certainly at the individual level, but then how do we have an impact on the community?
The issue of inclusion for children is very difficult. Yesterday I was at downtown Simsbury for some reason, and the high school students were walking from the high school to the crew. And there was a bunch of teenagers, 5 or 6 girls, and then maybe 30 feet behind them was one little girl trudging behind like this.
Sure.
And I just thought, oh my God, my heart goes out to her. I was imagining all kinds of things, but there's a child who's not included.
Correct.
And how do you change that behavior? It's really difficult.
It is difficult, and I think one of the things is, number one, getting kids to notice and to open their eyes, and that's hard. They tend to be around, focused around what's important to them. But we do notice, even in the cafeteria, no one's sitting by themselves. We've watched kids get up and move and go over. So I think number one would be just opening their eyes to what does it look like. And then 2, figuring out how to be in tune with each other. How do you take care of each other? So it's hard. It's something, and it's ongoing. I don't think you ever find what the answer is, because as they move to 2nd grade or 3rd grade, it looks different. And their problems or the troubles they may come around are different. So I do think it's an always moving target to get kids to understand what inclusion, what does it really mean to be inclusive.
We've also done, the psychologists have done some work with our classrooms this year on a program called Zones of Regulation. And what that is, it's like a green zone, a yellow zone, and a red zone, to recognize when you're in a spot where you're making good decisions and you're being able to have control over your body and make good choices. Yellow zone is when you're getting a little frustrated and maybe not making some of those good choices, or starting to get a little aggravated, and certainly we're trying to avoid the red zone when you're not in control.
When you flip out.
So what we found too, though, is that just having students recognize that what makes me go into the yellow zone might be different than what makes you go into the yellow zone, which might be different than what makes Maggie go into
Everybody
the yellow
has
zone.
different triggers.
So just being able to kind of, again, as Maggie had said, get to know yourself, but also realize, okay, so maybe this bothers me, but it doesn't bother you. And so just that we're all different. And then I think the other piece too that we're trying to focus on is that sometimes it's easy to include others or maybe change your behavior when there's a visible difference with a student. But how can we be inclusive to those when those differences are invisible or more internal?
The young girl yesterday that I saw, there's no visible difference.
Right, so that means that, but how do we include that and how do we recognize that in others?
So our time is going so fast. I want to touch quickly on Common Core. We did a whole show on it, but there's been a great deal of talk about it statewide and sort of people freaking out about it. In Simsbury, I get the impression that it has been going fairly well and that people are not hysterical about it.
Well, I think, anytime you have something that's new, it's always a challenge. But I think one of the advantages that we have is that Connecticut has had standards for over 10 years, and that Simsbury has based its curriculum on standards for that period of time. So having standards that we have to achieve towards isn't anything new in the district. And we have been working to align our curriculum to the new state standards. And we've been using the Teachers College to help with some of that work, as well as making some of those curricular changes on our own. So we have been making those changes systematically, but certainly now that the Smarter Balance was a pilot this year, you kind of feel the crunch a little bit more.
So that test is it done or is it still ongoing?
At the elementary level, it's complete. Middle school starts tomorrow.
Oh.
But I think, again, the pilot went fairly well. It was, we had some concerns about some of our third graders being on the computer, and is this going to be a stressful experience? And for the most part, it really went smoothly. I think by the third or fourth day, they were telling us how to log in, and they were able to get on. What the results of that, what that's going to look like, having them take a test on the computer, we'll have to wait and see. But again, we were very fortunate that the district was very thoughtful about things, that they made sure that we had enough technology, that we had the internet connections. The media specialists had been a lot of proactive work, making sure we had enough mice and headsets, and we had the supports at the building when the testing was occurring, so that if there was an emergency, teachers had somebody in the classroom that could answer those questions immediately. So trying to make the most of it, and really trying to make sure that whenever decision we're making is trying to keep what's best for the kids as the focus, no matter where our initiatives are coming from.
It's interesting to hear that. I mean, I did talk with Matt Curtis about it as well, and he reported on general state sort of town-wide progress. I find it interesting that parents and many teachers are freaking out about Common Core. And in the meantime, the White House is sort of freaking out about teacher education. They are now saying, we've got to prepare teachers, and I'm assuming every teacher who's hired by Simsbury, it's a desirable district to work in, is probably really well prepared. But both of you have extensive experience with schools of education. Do you think teachers are coming out of schools well prepared?
Yes, I do. I think they're coming out of school well prepared with book knowledge. I do think there's nothing like being in the classroom with the level of differentiation. You've got students coming in that are very prepared and ready for education, and you've got some coming in without that preparation. So I think that it's very hard to prepare for the 25 students that are sitting in front of you. That is something that a teacher comes up against each and every single year. We're not in the business of computers. We're in the business of connecting with humans and helping them at their right level. And I think that is something that it can be very hard as a new teacher to anticipate how are you going to help when you've got students who are here and students who are here and somewhere in between. So although I do think teachers are coming out maybe better prepared in the areas of technology and maybe more in terms of understanding the book sense of Common Core and the book sense, I don't know about the preparation level of the day-to-day, and it's hard. It's challenging, and it's something that I think you continue to hone in and you have to revisit each and every year. Some years it's like you go right back into it. After, in 14 years, I can remember years that I was like, wow, I know what I'm doing. And there were years that you relied on your colleagues and you needed to have that support system to be able to go to them.
So I think one of the things that you see a difference in is coming from a school psychology background, we had to do one semester of a practicum, which was 3 days a week in a school, and then we had to do a full year of an internship where you were 5 days a week in a school for an entire year. And I think having that experience in the school really helps you when you are then becoming a first year professional. And so I think when you have students who are in programs who have more time spent in classrooms as part of your student teaching, I think that's where you can see that book and the classroom experience come together a little bit more strongly than, say, in some schools where the your class teaching is a little bit less.
Yeah, so it's all the student teaching somewhat, really, because if you throw somebody in who's just done a few hours,
right,
there's no
8
way
weeks isn't going to prepare you for a lifetime of teaching.
Because there's the content in in education. There's the content at the elementary level. There's the math content and the reading content, but then there's the behavior management, and then there's the classroom management, and then there's so there's the day-to-day that it can be challenging. I definitely
classroom management, I think, is one of the biggest issues for a first-year teacher. You know a lot, but how do you manage this group of children? It certainly was my biggest problem the first year.
Absolutely, I would agree.
So quickly, just either one of you can answer this. What made you move? Maybe I should ask you, Maggie. What made you move from the classroom to administration?
It's a great question. I really think having an impact and helping teachers. I think I really wanted to be a resource for teachers and helping to push their practice. And I felt as though I was at a point where I had some strategies that I felt like I could share with people and help them. But I also felt like I could still have an impact on kids and be there for students. So I think that it was many different things. The impact to have on students, on teachers, and then on families. I think that was really the decision, is that I felt as though that I could help to move people in the direction that they wanted to go.
So I've not given us enough time. It's the time in the program when I like to give our viewers a chance to learn something personal about you, where you live, do you have family? I know both of you, I've heard, live in Simsbury, so tell me a little bit. Maggie, we'll start with you quickly.
Yes, I do live in Simsbury. My husband Phil and I moved here 8 years ago. We have 2 boys. I have a first grader, Owen, and I have a 4-year-old, Thomas. So yeah, they keep us busy, and we absolutely love it here.
So I live in town. I'm married to my husband. We will be celebrating our 14th year of marriage, and we have a daughter, Emily, who is 9, who attends Tooten Hills, and it's kind of nice because I was able to pass the torch. So when I left Tooten, she started kindergarten, so it was nice to still feel connected.
So that's lovely, and I'm going to have to stop here. The time went so fast. I'd like to thank everyone here at SCTV behind the scenes for their help in getting the show on the air. And thanks especially to my guests, Meg Evans and Maggie Seidel from Squadron Line Elementary School. And finally, thank you for joining us. As we close, you'll hear a recording of Squadron Line's school song, We All Shine at Squadron Line, which we've heard is in the process of being updated. If you miss any part of this show, you can always watch it on our website. Just go to simsburytv.org, where you can also see our schedule of programs. And you can also like us on Facebook.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.